they've been through this gauntlet of, the Big Ten play when you're coming off of championships and you have the target on your back and you're going into different arenas being on the road where, everybody wants what you've had in the past. I'd say right now, those two probably need to, and probably do have the biggest voices in the locker room.
Kyle.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about some of the turnover issues that you guys have had, and kind of get your perspective on it. Obviously, we've talked to Jan about it. I mean, you guys will play well for stretches. I mean, you get a lead there against Illinois, but then there's a stretch of almost 10 minutes where there's some turnovers, there's missed shots. Just from your perspective, what do you feel like is going wrong in those stretches, and how do you guys kind of correct that at this point of the season?
Yeah, I think, more specifically to yesterday's point, we talk about how this team is so deep, right? And I mean, our freshman class, they're super talented. And so by nature of that, I think this is the most amount of people that we've played on our roster in a number of years, right? We're pretty much like 10 deep this year. But because of that, it's really hard to determine like the best lineups at the best moment. And so, while you're getting subs, people are getting tired, you're trying to put whether the best offensive or defensive group on the floor. I think just based on that, it's taken a little bit of time for those certain lineups to develop that chemistry. And so, also when you bring in a little bit of inexperience and you have so much of that on the floor, some of those turnovers are bound to happen. Now, when getting a turnover, I'm not saying it's okay, but turnovers are going to happen throughout the course of the game. But once you come down, you have a turnover, and then you inflate that by getting missed box out and giving up offensive rebounds. I think that's where you run into a little trouble. And I think that's where our trouble was yesterday, giving up 30 points, whether it's, turning the ball over, allowing them to score, or not boxing out and giving them second chance points.
David.
Raina, appreciate the time. Going back through yesterday's comments with Jan, she talked about how maybe there needs to be a little bit more leadership with the upperclassmen. I guess from your perspective in coaching, maybe forced leadership or forcing players to be voices in the locker room doesn't always go well. So from your perspective, how do you kind of organically inspire maybe some of those upperclassmen to utilize their voice and their experience to kind of continue to push you guys where you want to be?
Yeah, I think for them, you look at our captains and you're asking them to just lead from where they are, right? You're not asking them to be like a Kate Martin, right? You're asking, our captains right now to be exactly who they are and to lean on their experience and to just share that with the rest of our roster. And so I think, that's what we've done. I think we've asked maybe a little bit of Hannah because I think for her, she wants that role. She just needs to be unleashed in that role to be able to share her perspective, especially in game, right? I mean, we know how, Hannah can be a little quiet at times off the court, but I think on the court, she turns into somebody completely different. I think she has a team's trust. I think she has a team's ear. I think she's a great communicator on the floor. But allowing those that has the experience to just, lead in the best way that you can and whatever that looks like, just trust that that's enough for the team at this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a 3.5 hour bus ride home. In close quarters. Just what was the mood of the team like from 9 o'clock till you guys parked the bus around 1 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, quiet bus, right? Quiet bus headed back, and I think the team, they were. I can kind of hear, but not really, because I'm in the front, they're in the back. But they're having conversations about what they need to shore up, what they could have done better, what they wish they would have done better. But I don't think anybody was holding their head by any means, right? I mean, they're just talking about controlling the things that they can control, which is essentially right, surmounting, the stopping so many turnovers, and again, just having better effort with our box outs. But I think us as a staff, we're also talking about trying to figure out what the best lineups are based on, how we want to start, how we want to finish, and then taking into account too who our opponent is, right? I mean, sometimes you need to go with speed, sometimes you need to go with height. Our offensive team and our defensive team aren't necessarily the best ones. And so, do we want to get off to a great start offensively? But at the end of that game, do we need to have our best defensive lineup in the game? And so at the front of the bus with our coaching staff, those are a lot of the conversations that were taking place last night.
Chad.
How's Tegan Mullaney looking in practice, and maybe what's keeping her away from a bigger role at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, if you guys listen to anything that I said at the beginning of the year, I'm Tegan Mullaney's biggest fan, right? And I think Tegan Mullaney is going to be a star here at Iowa. I have no doubt about that. I think the biggest thing for her right now is outside of her control, and she's playing behind two people that have a lot of experience in Hannah Stalky and Sydney Falter at the four. And it's really hard to play the three and the four in our system based on like how we run things in transition and things like that. But I think she's coming along. But I think, her inexperience right now paired with the experience of the two fours that are getting a little bit more of that time is probably the only thing that's helping her, hindering her from seeing the floor as much as we probably all would like.
David.
Yeah, Raina, I think I go back to when Lucy committed, and then obviously combine that with Aaliyah's, her injury that she had her senior year. I probably wouldn't have guessed she was going to start a game this season or really be a significant contributor. What have you seen since she got on campus, and how have you just watched her grow? And obviously her trajectory is stunning, but just to go from that to where she is now and where she's likely going to be, it's a little bit surprising to me, just given all the context of kind of how everything unfolded. So just kind of
Yeah.
curious what your insight's been.
I mean, Aaliyah's a hooper, right? Like, and so it's unfortunate that, her last year of high school, she had that injury. But at the end of the day, I mean, the kid, she comes from both her parents were hoopers, right? Mom and dad. And so you think about everything that she's learned in those moments, right? She's a student of the game. And so even when she was out this summer, or even most recently at the beginning of the season when she wasn't cleared to play yet, she was in the office watching film, because she wanted to know as soon as she's cleared to play, she wants to know what position she's going to be in, what plays we're going to be running so that she's ready to hit the ground running. Now, I think there's a little bit of a learning curve for a freshman, any freshman, right? And so it's taken her a bit just to kind of get used to the speed and the physicality, not only, of the league, but also her body, right? Coming off that injury. And so being able to, trust some jump stops or trust going off of one leg, for a layup. And so I think, she's got a long runway, and I mean, the sky's the limit for her, but I think she's just a student of the game and she wants to be the best that she can be. And she just really gets after it. Once we can get her to understand that like overthinking is slowing her down. I mean, I think we've seen glimpses of that right in Iowa State game, or even last game. She came out the gate just ready to go, and then once you start thinking about those turnovers, they kind of started to build a little bit more. So once we can get her to just play a little bit more freer, a little bit more looser, and understand that one game isn't going to make or break anything. I think, like you said, the sky's the limit for her.
Yeah.
You don't have the Indiana Scout, or do you?
I do.
You do. So, how are they different this year? And as a kind of a pairing question, when you're at the front of the bus, what kind of lineups, conversations are you having going into a game like this?
Yeah, and so to answer your first question, their biggest difference is, I mean, the loss of Mackenzie Holmes, right? And even Sarah Scalia. So you're thinking like a dead eye 3-point shooter, and then a post that's been like a Big Ten post for the ages, right? And so they're not necessarily playing through their post, although their post and their backup post are really good this year, right? They're putting up significant numbers. But I think they're playing a little bit more to their guard play and a little bit more team basketball. I mean, four of their starters are averaging, double figures, and anybody can be their leading scorer on any night. They're running a lot of the same sets, but I think they're really efficient in what they're doing, especially in their shot taking. They're pretty consistent from behind the arc. And like I said, their post players are really good. They do a good job on the boards as well. But I think, Terry Morin down there, she does a great job year in and year out, with her roster. And so that's just a little bit, about Indiana. In terms of, the conversation last night going into this game, again, it's just going to like, what do we need to have the best start, to this game? And then what's going to sustain us? Like, what's going to be most important for us through this game? Unfortunately, it ain't football, right? You can't sub offense, defense, like, every possession, every few possessions. And so just figuring out what's going to be, not only the best start for us, but what's the best combination that we can put together to be able to sustain maybe 5 minutes and not having to sub so much, because I think it is hard for our kids to start to get into a rhythm, when they're in for two and then maybe sliding over position or coming out the game. That's very hard to kind of get a chemistry, with the remaining players on the floor, and then shoring up that whatever we decide those couple lineups are going to be, that they get the maximum reps today and tomorrow.
Kyle.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I mean, this coaching staff is kind of a first-year coaching staff. I mean, you guys were all around, but I mean, it's Jan's first time being a head coach, and this roster is so different from the last couple of years that this is the first time that this group, that both coaches and players have kind of had to deal with, a losing streak, some stretches of bad play. How do you guys, both as a coaching staff and then as a team, kind of stay together and make sure that this losing streak doesn't really snowball in a time where, as a group, you guys really haven't been in this situation?
Yeah, I think, watching the film and then putting it to bed, right? I mean, you get 24 hours to celebrate a win or to mourn over a loss, right? And then you turn the page. And I think our team, no matter, the losses that we've had, we've done a great job of watching the film, being held accountable and then really focusing in on the next scout because no two scouts are going to be alike for the most part. In addition to that, just reminding this team of who they are, right? I mean, we came out the gate in our non-conference playing some really, really good basketball. And, I think for me, in particular with my position group, and I have a lot of freshmen in that position group, just walking them in the fall through what a season in the Big Ten is going to look like. You're going to come out, you're not going to be on anybody's scouting report, and you're going to have some really, really good games. All of a sudden, you're going to be scouted, and people are going to start trying to take away your strengths, right? How can you pour into your other teammates and lean on the things that you do really, really well while also continue to get better at some of those things that you're not great at the moment? And so, for Tegan Mullaney, in particular, like having that conversation with her and it's gone exactly, it holds true. I mean, she came out first game of the season and she was on fire, right? Now everybody's starting to take away her three and she's got to drive a little bit more. But then her being able to understand that it's a process and everybody's process is going to look different. Some people are going to learn on the bench and in practice. Some people are going to learn by just being in the game by the nature of, who we need on the floor at that time. And so I think just being open and vulnerable about them, where they are in their process right now and what they can contribute to each game because it might be different, right? Whereas Aaliyah got to start last time, Taylor Strimlo has also started this season, right? So just letting them know that, you never know when your number is going to be called. Just stay ready. Always know the scout. Make sure you're in there with your position coach. So when your number's called, you're ready to contribute.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Raina.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ryan.